Take a pit stop for all things NASCAR with the 4 Tire Change podcast. Here is your host, Dawson Iserloh.
4 Tire Change with the championship reaction. We have finally made it. What a season it was in the NASCAR Cup Series, and an ending that some were certainly excited about, and plenty of others had a lot to complain about with. So we'll break it all down here for you in the next handful of minutes. And first of all, just want to thank everybody for tuning in all year long. We will have a couple off-season episodes here as we go. Certainly next week we'll have more to talk about with just kind of the initial rumors of what's going to be a very busy off-season, not only with drivers moving teams, as that always happens. A lot of that already kind of settled. But this ongoing legal situation, I don't know how it's going to end up at all. And so I wanted to kind of separate those thoughts. We're not going to talk about that here today. We're going to talk about the championship format, which is certainly being questioned as well, and more. But it is going to be an interesting offseason. So I do want to kind of say that. And we'll be around to talk about it here, if not weekly, then certainly monthly as things go on. So, Phoenix, right? We get our championship race. We get our championship 4. A couple Penske drivers, Ryan Blaney, Joey Logano, Tyler Reddick representing 2311, and then William Byron Hendrick, who got in, of course, because Christopher Bell was not given the spot after he rode the wall at Martinsville. So going into it, I'm going to be completely honest, I was kind of rooting for either Ryan Blaney or Tyler Reddick just because I wanted the champion to have the least number of strings attached. And with Joey Logano only getting in, remember when Bowman got disqualified, and, William Byron only getting in because of Bell getting disqualified, I just wanted our champion to feel like a true champ. So I was like, all right, I think best case is Reddick, who was the regular season champion. I think you'd have made a great case for that. And Blaney, who won his way in at Martinsville just like he did the year before. Chance to be a back-to-back champ. I liked both of those storylines better. Well, as it turns out, obviously, Joey Logano didn't care what I wanted and did not care about the storylines involved, as he has a tremendous drive. And look, he did a great job on Sunday. And the strategy, look, here's the thing with Phoenix. It was an entertaining race by Phoenix standards, no doubt. And the first couple stages, maybe more so tame, but as you got to that final stage, you had a lot of intrigue. You had Ryan Blaney trying to make up ground, trying to run him down. And those last 25 laps where Blaney gets all the way there after getting through and getting past Larson and all, that was all really good. But then at the end, Blaney's not able to get around him, and I always feel like it's kind of the same thing when a football team is way behind and they put together a crazy comeback. It's always more satisfying for the casual fan. The fan, of course, if you're a fan of one of the teams involved, then you're upset if it doesn't go your way. But if you're just watching it for the enjoyment of the game, which is kind of how I was, just watching it because I'm a fan of NASCAR and host a podcast, it's always more entertaining when the guy who's coming from behind makes the pass, or the team that's trailing gets all the way there and takes the lead. But Blaney wasn't able to do that. And so, look, a good battle. And ultimately, Joey Logano is a very deserving champion based on the race that he ran on Sunday. That leads us to the conversation, though, about Logano's legacy. And look, I understand it and I hear it. 15th in points in the regular season. Needed a disqualification to move through at one of the points in the playoffs, and then shows up and wins Phoenix all of a sudden. And you feel like maybe that's not the most deserving. Won a fuel mileage race to move on in an early round of the playoffs. But at the end of the day, he won in the format that we have agreed upon. Well, I guess we didn't have any say in it. The format that NASCAR has agreed upon. And so from that, I do think he's a deserving champion in some ways. Now, would I like to see a format that makes it to where a guy like Joey Logano either can't or has to do much more to win a title? Yeah, no doubt about it. And I think there's some things that can be done. And the good news is, at the time I'm taping this, NASCAR's already come out and said, hey, we're going to look at it. We're going to look at the format. We think maybe there are some tweaks to be made. Now, there was some rumors that they talked about maybe a format where the regular season champion gets a bye into the later rounds. Now we're getting real wild, man. I think it's more beneficial to simplify this format instead of making it more complicated. Okay? And you know what? Let's talk about the format, but first we'll talk about Joey Logano. 3-time champion. What does he join? 10 drivers all time? I mean, he is in that list now. And you can say what you want about this one. You can say what you want about the last one. The format was agreed upon, and everybody knew how the rules worked, and he won the championship in now 3 different seasons. So I don't think that can be taken away from him. He is certainly one of the great drivers of this generation. Is he as good as some of the other guys who have 3 titles? Maybe that's a conversation to have for a different day. But at the end of it, and as you get farther removed from it, you're going to remember less and less of the details of each run to the title. And you're just going to remember that number 22 was the champ that given year. So incredible job by Penske, and they just know how to win at this time of the year. What's that, 3 in a row now, right? You go Logano, Blaney, Logano here the last 3 seasons. That's 3 in the next-gen car as well. And they didn't look particularly dominant in any of those 3 years, but yet when it came to the playoffs, and certainly there's a Phoenix conversation to be had here as well. Like, they definitely know how to put a setup together for that track, but they are the champs again, and credit to Joey Logano. Okay, now let's talk format. Yes, I think there need to be some changes. First of all, I think the easiest one of them all is not having the championship race at Phoenix every year. And I know maybe from NASCAR's perspective, it's not the easiest one because it has all the money and all the facilities and everything else that's involved with Phoenix. But I don't know how much you get a much more compelling race than Sunday, and it was compelling, but it's nowhere near what we saw at Homestead, and it's nowhere near what we've seen at some of the mile and a halves this year. And honestly, I don't even think it's the same as what we saw at Martinsville. So I'm just over the Phoenix championship stuff. I do also think it is a disadvantage to some race teams where, they talked about the way the Ford car turns and stuff. I don't know if it's all that much of just a manufacturer advantage, but you got race teams that are really good at getting a fast race car at Phoenix. I don't think those teams should have an inherent advantage every single year. It's why, what else would fix it? Even if you want your last race of the season to be at Phoenix and you want to crown your champion there, okay, let's make the last round multiple races. I think that solves a lot of stuff. Talk about taking away some of the flukiness of it. And I know, look, if a driver DNFs one of those 3, it's still going to be next to impossible for them to come back and win the championship 4, but I think it would take a lot of the guessing game out of it, and I think people would really enjoy that. And then, another thing that I think needs to be factored in here is if we do change the format overall, not just, the number of races in each round, why don't we simplify instead of complicating things more? And they're talking about a driver getting a bye into the later rounds, or maybe after that, having different numbers of drivers that move on based on wins and all this other stuff. How about you go not all the way back to the chase format where it's just a reset of the points with 10 drivers, but a simplification of, maybe less playoff drivers in the first place, which I think would, take some of that flukiness out. The big thing that they have to decide, though, and I think it's the most important element of whatever you do with a new playoff format, is are we going to stick with the fact that wins matter the most right now? And I still really struggle with it because I like the fact that you can win and you're in, and it gives you a chance, and it gives some of those race teams that aren't as fast as the big powerhouse teams a reason to show up every week and try to, pull something off with a differing strategy and go for the race win and not be happy to be running 12th one week. So I like that aspect of it, but if you're going to shrink the field, you can't do the win and you're in situation because we've already seen with this car, you're going to get 15 winners in a season. You're going to get at least 10 to 12 winners in a season. So if you go down to 12 drivers in this thing, well, 12 winners could happen, and then you're eliminating the idea of a really consistent, great driver who maybe even could win the regular season championship or come in second, not making the playoffs again. So I think that's a tough call for NASCAR to make, and I know that there's some real good things that have come from the value they've put on winning. But there's also been some things that aren't so great, right? Driver wins early in the season. They can say, hey, all right, we're just going to worry about the playoffs now. And I don't think that's ideal. The last thing that needs to happen, too, and I know it wasn't a problem at Phoenix because it was the championship, but with Martinsville and the whole drivers helping each other out and giving spots and stuff, you got to create a playoff format that doesn't allow them to do that, or it penalizes them more harshly than where they were penalized this year, where teams don't think that's an option. Because I just can't stand the fact that we had, again, 2 of these 4 drivers, and one of them specifically, which was Byron, who didn't win it in the end, but got in because of this really complicated situation where there was a whole lot of stuff going on that wasn't even necessarily in his control, but shouldn't have been happening. So, look, a great year in the NASCAR Cup Series in a lot of different ways. The sport got some exposure. There was some cool things that happened. You go back, you think about the Larson doing the double. We had a loaded-out Final 8, maybe not necessarily the same situation in the Final 4, but Joey Logano's the champion, and I think that is, something that he's a champion in the system that we created or that NASCAR created. So I'm certainly open to some changes happening, but for now, another season comes to a close and the offseason begins. We'll still be coming at you with 4-tire change here periodically, as I mentioned. Any questions and comments, leave them down below. We'll address them in our offseason episode. But for now, we're signing out.